And welcome back to the Upside Sports Network. My name is Michael. Appreciate you guys joining us tonight. Late nights for us anyway, but I want to get to all the headlines that we missed today with you guys. Put out a ton of videos, got a lot of responses from them, so appreciate all of you who watched, participated, even those new subscribers we gained today. Welcome to the Upside Sports Network. Let's get right into it. Every day about 9 o'clock until we reach the NBA trade deadline, we will be going through the list of rumors that are going around the NBA right now, break down some of the news items that happened as well, and make sure you hit that subscribe button. That way you guys can stay up to date on all the latest. You guys can follow us here on YouTube, hit that subscribe button, follow us on Twitter at UpsideSN, Facebook page as well under the same name, Upside Sports Network. We also have a TikTok, just starting it out anyway, but we'll be posting some more content as we get going. But in case you guys are unfamiliar, this is hoopsrumors.com. This is where you guys can kind of get the print form of a lot of the rumors that are circulating out there, but it is going to be very filtered. These are going to be vetted rumors only, and that is it. You're not going to hear any of these one source only rumors. You're not going to hear anything like that. You're going to hear multiple sourced rumors out there. So some of the things that are just starting to percolate on the surface, you're not going to see on this site. I will warn you about that. Now, as far as the rest of this goes, they're very good. They're very accurate, which is why I really trust them as far as the information that I get from them. You can kind of check out all the news items from today, dealing a lot with the Kyrie Irving trade, both the trade that actually happened between the Brooklyn Nets and the Dallas Mavericks, and the trades that didn't happen. The multiple three-team trade ideas that were out there over the last 24 hours really percolated over the last 5 or 6 hours before the deal was actually made, official anyway. You also had all the other teams that were in the running for Kyrie Irving, all of their machinations as far as their trade packages that they were offering to the Nets to bring in the all-star point guard. And unfortunately for them, Dallas just had the better package. I mean, better talent for right now because they got a point guard back, a starting quality point guard in Spencer Dinwiddie. They also got a defensive wing that also has a good three-point shot when he's on. He has struggled offensively this year, but he's on a team-friendly contract, plus the picks giving them further ammunition to add here at the deadline. Just nobody else was able to match that. Looking at the Suns' offer of CP3 and Jay Crowder, I mean, come on. You're taking on the big contract of CP3 as he ages. Sure, it gives you another star to replace in that lineup, but how's your future look? And there was no draft picks attached to that deal as well. Jay Crowder was thrown in there. He hasn't played all year. He is still a good defensive-minded wing, don't get me wrong, but the Dallas Mavericks, the ability to add a first-round pick in there, couple of extra seconds, and at this point, I would rather have Spencer Dinwiddie in his contract rather than CP3, his age, his injury histories, and the contract that he's on right now for the length of term as well. So the Dallas Mavericks obviously had the better deal there. Looking at the LA Clippers, they offered Man Kennard as well as a first-round pick and 2 first-round pick swaps. Those are very important there. Got to be curious about what those swaps would ultimately would have ended up being, especially if they lose a couple of guys in free agency over the next few years. But that first-round pick would certainly have been valuable as well. But the package itself, as far as on-the-court talent, Terrence Mann I really like, tenacious defender. Kennard is a very good three-point shooter. I believe he's in the top 10 this year as far as percentage from three-point range, but he struggles defensively, whereas Mann struggles offensively. So 2 incomplete players don't really jive there. Dinwiddie gives you a little bit of both, and he's definitely a leader on the floor. Plus the picks, Dallas, you have a little bit more uncertainty as to where that pick's going to fall, so that pick probably has a little bit more value. So again, the Dallas Mavericks offer was accepted. I know we've been talking a lot about Kyrie Irving because that's basically what the market has been for the last 48 hours. A lot of the market has been held up because they're waiting for this Kyrie Irving news to kind of finally drop. There was always the issue of maybe he doesn't pass the physical, and if at that point do the Dallas Mavericks still say, hey, let's go ahead and get it done? Or do they go ahead and try to rework the deal? Or does another team get involved? But no, Dallas absolutely wanted Kyrie. They got the deal done. Physical was passed. It was just the Nets, it sounded like, that were trying to work out a 3-team deal. We'll work into those rumors here in just a moment. The last team that actually had an offer on the table for Kyrie Irving was the LA Lakers. They had Russell Westbrook in return going for Kyrie Irving and another player, ideally Joe Harris, for an unprotected first-round pick in 27 and a protected pick in 29. That's why I believe the Nets were holding off on that offer because they wanted 2 completely unprotected first-round picks. And even at that point, is the deal still worth what they got in present-day value and future value from the Dallas Mavericks? Obviously not in their eyes, and so that's why they signed that offer or signed the agreement to go ahead and get that deal done. Now, as far as the rumors around the Brooklyn Nets today, that's why the trade was kind of held up, at least for a few hours after the physical was passed by Kyrie Irving. He is actually in Dallas right now. He is about to fly out to LA, where the Mavericks are going to play the LA Clippers. By the way, the Mavericks played very shorthanded tonight. They did get Christian Wood back in the lineup after missing 8 games due to a fractured thumb, and what an important piece he was. But the story of the game, though, was Josh Green and the emergence of Josh Green. He scored, I believe, 29 points in the game without, of course, Luka Doncic, without Dinwiddie, Finney-Smith, without any of these players. Kyrie obviously wasn't there yet, and so they just had to kind of roll with a very limited roster. They're starting a guy who was in the G League for the majority of the year, and they really did something special tonight against the Utah Jazz on the road. Just a great performance by the Dallas Mavericks with a very limited roster. Great coaching job by Jason Kidd tonight, but we'll set that one aside. The Brooklyn Nets held up this trade because they were hoping to get this deal to expand to a 3rd team, possibly pivoting and sending out Spencer Dinwiddie to try to bring in a Fred VanVleet, maybe sending out another pick in return as well. That would have been a good thing for them, I believe, because they would really try to get a contract extension done with Fred VanVleet. The question for me is, why would you try to go for Fred VanVleet when you already have Spencer Dinwiddie? Why would you give up additional assets? I view Fred VanVleet as a little bit more of a superior player to Dinwiddie, a little bit, and that's only because of the track record of success that he has. Dinwiddie, of course, had his struggles with the Washington Wizards. Could that become an issue again with the Brooklyn Nets? I don't think it will. That's why I would have held back and said, no, I'll hang on to Dinwiddie and the picks, reinvest those assets elsewhere. The rumors right now, of course, center around Naz Reid of the Minnesota Timberwolves, not on a big contract at all, so there's no reason to hold up the deal between the Dallas Mavericks and the Brooklyn Nets. Therefore, the deal is made, and that's kind of where we sit right now. Brooklyn still looking to add here at the deadline. Dallas still looking to offload some of the big contracts that they have. That way they can work around some other deals as well. You remember what they did last year with Kristaps Porzingis. They took one big contract, split it into 2 smaller contracts in the effort of trying to get another star with those more tradable contracts. That's what they did with Spencer Dinwiddie. They're hoping to do the same by offloading some of the bigger salaries that they have left. Bertans, Hardaway, paring them down into smaller deals, and then flipping them at some point to try to get other trades done in the future. This is not going to be an end result for what the team will look like. They may end up holding their roster pat as of right now. The team performed very well. Josh Green, I think, would be off the table right now as far as trade discussions for the Dallas Mavericks. Not saying his trade value is that high. I'm just saying that's how important he is to where the Dallas Mavericks are right now. I think the Dallas Mavericks could be convinced to part with a guy like Reggie Bullock. He's been a leader on that team, he's kind of been the second guy as far as defensive leaders on that team, next to Dorian Finney-Smith. Obviously, Finney-Smith is out. Reggie Bullock could be the next one to go, along with Tim Hardaway Jr. There has been significant interest in Reggie Bullock from his former team, the New York Knicks, as well as the LA Lakers. Lakers had him before as well. I think the Lakers could use some more wing help, and if they're not able to get a guy like Jay Crowder here at the deadline, or swing big and get an Anunoby or a Buddy Hield or something like that, they could circle back to Dallas and try to get one of their wings. Maybe, in fact, give the Dallas Mavericks an expiring contract, which is kind of what they're looking if they can't get smaller deals to trade in future trades as well, and maybe get a draft pick back in return. Dallas might be amenable to something like that. I've seen people commenting on social media saying the Mavericks are not interested in trading for picks at this point. I think they would really like picks just because it gets them back into the conversation for a third star. They're not just sitting back and saying, all right, we got Kyrie. We're done. We're title contenders. Yes, they're saying this gives them a shot at the title, absolutely, because he is the shot maker right now in the NBA. Luka Doncic, one of the top 5 players in all of the NBA right now. And when you look at this roster, this team is still very limited defensively. They could use some weaponry there. They could use some help on the wing. And so if you're able to spin off some of the assets that you have right now in return for picks, those are invaluable when it comes to trades. And so if you're trying to salary match and try to do those kinds of things here at the deadline or even into the offseason, those draft picks would become even more valuable to try to trade and acquire that third star. You never know who's going to become available. For instance, Kyrie Irving, this summer, of course, requested a trade. Everybody thought, hey, they're going to work out an extension after they finally got into the season. Same thing with Kevin Durant. Nobody thought he would request a trade 1 year after signing to stay in Brooklyn for 4 more years. And that's where we were last year. You never know who's going to pop up on the market. The Bulls, after the season, if they get bounced in the first round once again, do they turn around and say, hey, Zach LaVine, time to go, bye-bye? Then you got to have draft picks available to trade for something like that. The Dallas Mavericks would be very small if they did go after a guy like Zach LaVine, but I'm just saying you never know who's going to become available, who's going to request a trade, and when you have an opportunity to land a star in the NBA, you have to take that chance. That's why Dallas tried really hard to get Kristaps Porzingis originally. They took a chance on his health. Of course, the health, continues to be an issue even with the Washington Wizards, but he's still an impact player when healthy. He didn't mesh necessarily as great as they thought he would with Luka Doncic. Their game, ideally, looks very good on paper. You got kind of a pick-and-pop guy in Porzingis. At the time, he was more of a pick-and-roll guy. He still had a good long-range shot, still does right now with the Washington Wizards, but he's not healthy enough to stay on the floor, not for the salary that the Mavericks were giving him. That's why they moved him out. Dallas had an opportunity here to land Kyrie Irving, and so they went ahead and jumped on it as well. The trade talks really ramped up on Sunday when Dallas was finally willing to include a guy like Spencer Dinwiddie in the trade. Before, they had guys like Tim Hardaway Jr. in there, Christian Wood. They were more willing to move guys like that. They wanted to hang on to Dinwiddie, but when they realized that the competition for Kyrie Irving was getting stiff, the Clippers were starting to get more serious about bringing in the point guard. The Heat, of course, I haven't even mentioned them. We're interested in bringing him in as well. We'll touch on Kyle Lowry's rumors here in just a moment. But the Mavericks were willing to push their chips to the center to make sure they got the star that they wanted. Now, Kyrie comes with all kinds of off-the-court baggage, and that remains to be seen whether or not the Mavericks will extend his deal at some point or if they're going to try to extend him to a max contract after the year. But I think if things work out the rest of the season and they push to, say, the Western Conference Finals once again with Kyrie, we're looking at a team that's definitely going to give Kyrie the max. I think he would immediately sign it. And then you're looking at 2 superstars already. And then what else are you going to try to do to build around Luka and Kyrie? That's really the question. Remember those years in Miami where LeBron, Dwayne Wade, and Chris Bosh made things work with a shoestring budget around them? They had Shane Battier, Mike Miller, Mike Bibby. They had Gary Payton for a moment, Udonis Haslem. They really did a lot of things around that roster to make things work. And they at one point even had Ray Allen come in on a discount. They made things work on a shoestring budget. Not saying that's the way Dallas is ultimately going to go, but you just want to leave yourself open to options to try to acquire a third star if possible. Because once you get a third star, it's very rare that the situation that you have with 3 stars doesn't succeed. We just saw possibly one of the worst big threes ever in NBA history. Kyrie was a part of that. Kyrie, KD, and James Harden. Only one playoff series victory out of that big three, one of the worst big threes ever to come together, and they'll go down in record books for that. But Dallas, whenever, or any team for that matter, if you're able to acquire a big three, your chances of success drastically improve. That's why LeBron James was so frustrated today about the news that Kyrie Irving was indeed going to go to Dallas. It was going to be done, and that he could just sit there and do nothing about it. The Nets ownership, in fact, was adamant that they do not trade him to the Lakers at all costs, and they were, fortunately for them, the best offer was not from the Lakers anyway. It came from Dallas, and they were able to accept that trade. But whether there's other teams just not wanting to see LeBron James succeed anymore, they're just sick of seeing the LeBron James show. They're not going to try to spite their face in spite of their nose, whatever that phrase is. Anyway, it's 11 o'clock. Anyway, I'm tired, but you get what I'm trying to say. They want to see their own team succeed, and Dallas had the best offer for the Lakers. If they had been able to acquire another star player to that lineup, bring in Kyrie, you have LeBron and Anthony Davis when healthy. You've already made the move to strengthen yourself at the wing position with Rui Hachimura. I imagine they would have probably tried to bring in another wing at some point to try to help bolster that wing rotation as well. Dennis Schroeder there at the point guard spot to kind of back up Kyrie, give him some more scoring off the bench. They had some good weapons there. They got a shoestring budget as far as players like Thomas Bryant, who came in at a discount this offseason. Another player that really performed well with the Washington Wizards over the last few years. He had an opportunity to make more money elsewhere and took the chance of going to LA to take the minutes available to him there, and he's performed well. So the Lakers, if they had built that big three together, they certainly, I believe, would have made it into the play-in. I think they would have made it into the top 6 of the Western Conference. And with the West being so weak this year, with the Denver Nuggets being the leaders in the West right now, Memphis Grizzlies losing 7 of their last 8 games, and they're the 2nd seed right now. Golden State's going to be without Steph Curry for the better part of a month. You're looking at a wide open Western Conference, and when you have 3 big stars like that who are going to have time to gel the rest of the way, things could have looked very interesting in LA to possibly win yet another title. But they don't get it done. They're going to have to go the trade route, possibly the Mike Conley route with Utah, but they're not going to be able to get Kyrie because he goes to Dallas. And we'll see how things unravel both in Brooklyn and in LA with Durant and LeBron James. If things don't work out in Brooklyn with this trade, with the pieces that they decide to trade for the rest of the way until the deadline, if they get bounced in the first round easily once again, we could see Kevin Durant once again request a trade. Same thing in LA because they didn't get Kyrie. If Kyrie decides to stay in Dallas after this season and get the max contract there, we could see LeBron James just say, all right, I've tried. I can't get anything else out of this team. Trade me somewhere where I contend for a title for the last couple of years in my career. We could see something like that happen as well. I think both cases are long shots, but both are certainly on the table as of right now, especially considering the risks both teams have been taking over the past couple of years. But thank you guys for joining us here at The Upside. Really appreciate all the support we've gained over the past couple of days. We've gained like 40 subscribers in the last 3 days. It's something crazy like that. So thank you guys for all of you who have subscribed. If you're just joining us for the first time, welcome. Hit that subscribe button, like the video, really does help us out. We posted a ton of content for you guys today. We're going to try to post a whole bunch of little blurbs like we did today, 15-second videos to keep you guys updated on what's going on. I work open to close tomorrow, so it's going to be a little bit more difficult to give you, that instant reaction stuff that I was trying to get you out, our guys out there today, but I will certainly try. But we will have our live video tomorrow night, 9 o'clock, to kind of wrap up all the news of the day. And don't forget, Thursday is the trade deadline, February 9th. We will be live for you guys all day long, starting at 8 a.m., and we'll probably be going through probably about 4 or 5 p.m. after the deadline anyway, just to kind of break down any deals that happen right up until and after the deadline if they're announced a little bit later. But thank you guys for joining us here tonight. As I mentioned, as you can see on the page here, Jason Kidd already talking about Kyrie Irving elevating the team's potential right now into the championship contender status. I believe Luka Doncic already got him to the Western Conference Finals last year with a very diverse roster, three different ball handlers on the roster, able to push them a little bit higher than what what other media personalities at least expected from the outside looking in. Now they've certainly raised their ceiling right now with the best shot maker in the entire NBA in Kyrie Irving landing in Dallas. So that's kind of the first item there that you see on Hoops Rumors. A lot of Dallas Maverick stuff related today. Of course, the Suns governor was announced or he was ratified anyway, to be the Suns governor after the sale of the Suns was complete. So that was another item today. Schedule changes. We're not going to worry too much about that. We talked a little bit about the Fred VanVleet stuff. Jacques Vaughn, the coach of the Brooklyn Nets, have some sharp words for Kyrie Irving about accountability, being there for your team, etc. But that's the nature of the NBA. When you request a trade, you sit out. Trade being finalized, etc. Trying to get to the Kyle Lowry stuff. A little bit of news here with Christian Wood. He's been trying to stay with the Dallas Mavericks. He's eligible for a 4-year, $77 million contract extension as of right now. Of course, after the season, he'll be eligible for significantly more than that, but that's the max the Mavericks can offer right now. Mavericks, though, are only offering 2 years, $36 million right now to Christian Wood. I think if he accepts that deal, Dallas will certainly hold on to him. That salary of around $18 million would be a bargain for a player of Christian Wood's ability. I think he would solidify himself as the offensive component of whatever their front court's going to look like over the next couple of years with Kyrie Irving and Luka Doncic. Anyway, what a core that would make, and then they would still have plenty of room to add around the periphery as well. He did just fracture his thumb about a couple of weeks ago against the Atlanta Hawks. John Collins initially injured the thumb after smacking it. And then, of course, when he went to dunk later in the game, it really really broke at that point, and that was why he missed some time. He was back tonight, and as I mentioned, just a great coaching job tonight with Jason Kidd leading the Dallas Mavericks to a victory on the road in Utah, a tough place for Dallas to play over the years, and they got the job done. A guy that usually came off the bench for the Dallas Mavericks over the past couple of years, Josh Green, had his best game as a Maverick, 29 points. Really, he's going to have a big role on this team going forward. He's probably going to take over the role of Dorian Finney-Smith on this team. I think he has a much higher ceiling offensively than Dorian ever did, but defensively, Dorian was a great defender, long, lanky defender. That will certainly be missed in Dallas, and good luck to him in Brooklyn. But that's kind of the news out of Dallas at the moment. Of course, they're still trying to unload the big contracts, as I mentioned, of Tim Hardaway Jr., Davis Bertans, JaVale McGee as well. There has been some talk, anyway, about the LA Clippers being interested in Christian Wood. So if they can't get the extension done and they want assets back before they lose Christian Wood for nothing in free agency, maybe the Clippers could pry him away. As far as Tim Hardaway Jr., we've heard before that the Cleveland Cavaliers have been connected to him, as well as the LA Lakers, as they try to improve their wing position. There's a number of teams out there that could use some wing help, and Tim Hardaway Jr., even on a bloated contract, would be a difference maker in both of those scenarios. Now, as far as Davis Bertans, obviously he's not necessarily a great asset. The Mavericks just would love to get his contract off the books, even pare it down into 2 smaller contracts if they could. It's going to cost them draft equity, I believe, to be able to move him at some point. But if the question remains, what equity would it really cost? The total value of his contract right now is around $30-ish million, a hair under that. And so if you're able to take on another 2-year deal that's even higher than that, maybe you're able to convince a team not to make you give up draft capital in order to get it done. Maybe you take on a worse deal in a trade. Remains to be seen what they decide to do. But as I mentioned, the Miami Heat have opened their pocketbooks anyway. They're willing to move Kyle Lowry. They made the big acquisition a couple of years ago with the Toronto Raptors, giving him that big contract anyway, the sign and trade deal, Goran Dragic going the other way, before he ultimately ended up in San Antonio with a buyout, and now he's with the Bulls. But Kyle Lowry hasn't been special with Miami. He's certainly looked a lot older over the past couple of years, as that Miami Heat team has certainly started to look a little small over the past couple of years, and they've done a really great job getting some undrafted free agents to really hit, but they're starting to lose as far as in the talent acquisition game. Sure, they're getting some run out of these undrafted free agents, but as far as guys that have upper end talent, that's where they're beginning to fall behind. There was some rumors about a D'Angelo Russell for Kyle Lowry trade in the works about a month ago. Minnesota said we want no part of that. We don't have any interest in Kyle Lowry, and understandably so. D'Angelo Russell's a better player, younger. He is in the final year of his deal, though, and that's why I think D'Angelo Russell has a chance to be traded, because Minnesota either A, wants a first-round pick back because they don't want to lose him for nothing in free agency. If they can't get the extension done with him before the deadline, I think there's a very real chance D'Angelo Russell is traded. The Timberwolves do have interest in Patrick Beverley from the LA Lakers, so maybe there's a fit there. Maybe there's a 3-team trade that could work. You guys can check out our video here on YouTube about the Dallas Mavericks possibly having interest in D'Angelo Russell, about how a 3-team trade between the Lakers, Timberwolves, and Mavericks would work. I don't think that would really work right now just because the Mavericks already made the trade for Kyrie, but something like that with a third team sending D'Angelo Russell there, say the LA Clippers, or however things work out, that could be a fit for them. Maybe send John Wall back to Minnesota. But thank you guys for joining us here tonight. As I mentioned, hit that subscribe button. We'll be live for you guys again tomorrow night at 9 o'clock, so make sure you guys join us then. We talked a little bit about how that trade was held up with Kyrie going to Dallas, how their Nets were looking for a third team. The Sixers have been looking to shed a little bit of salary here at the deadline to get beneath the tax. Here's an interesting article about Furkan Korkmaz requesting a trade. He might have been one of the guys that was traded here at the deadline anyway, because the Sixers need to trim a little bit of salary. They do have interest in the Utah Jazz's Jared Vanderbilt. He's a very good, athletic, kind of a big man, 6'9", can kind of play the 4 or 5 position for you, but he also can guard 2s, 3s, 4s, and 5s. So he's very good defensively. The question is, will his offensive game ever match his defensive level of play? And when you have an athletic player like that, think of a guy like Jeremy Grant, who initially was thought as kind of a long, lanky defender, who could be, the next guy that fits that Jeremy Grant mold, kind of evolves as he gets a little bit older, gets more comfortable in the NBA, develops an offensive game. Maybe that could be the ceiling for a guy like Jared Vanderbilt. But the 76ers certainly have interest in him. He has about a $4.3 million contract this year. So if they're going to try to trim some salary, Korkmaz would be one place where they could look to try to trim a little bit of salary, as well as some of the other contracts that they have at the back end of their roster. The Sixers are looking to add one front court player, and maybe Jared Vanderbilt could be the guy that they would like to bring in on the cheap. Naz Reid of the Minnesota Timberwolves, as I mentioned with the Brooklyn Nets, is another buy low cost candidate, if you will. It's not going to come cheap. It's probably going to cost you 3 second-round picks to get a guy like that, but we could see something like that happen. A little bit of news out of the Chicago Bulls is that they're going to wait until the deadline, just like the Toronto Raptors, as to decide whether or not to buy or sell. The rumors over the last couple of hours consist of Alex Caruso. The asking price for him had been 2 first-round picks if they were to try to sell him. I think that price has started to come down a little bit. They realized that 2 first-round picks, even though Alex Caruso is great defensively, he's a good offensive mind, he's not necessarily a scorer, doesn't require the ball in his hands all the time, kind of a great teammate all the way around, is on a team-friendly deal as well. He certainly has a lot of value, but it wasn't worth 2 first-round picks. And the Bulls have some other needs on their roster right now. They're going to have Lonzo Ball back at some point before the end of the year, it looks like. They've got some good guards already. They could use some depth as far as at the wing position and shooting, of course, but every team could use a little bit of that at any point in time. But we'll see what the Bulls end up doing here at the deadline, so keep your eyes out on what Alex Caruso might end up going for here at the deadline. San Antonio Spurs rumors. Jakob Poeltl continues to be on the market. Seems like more and more rumors come out about him each day. We talked originally about the Toronto Raptors and the Boston Celtics being interested in him, but those are certainly not the only 2 teams. A lot of teams out there need help at the 5 position. Dallas Mavericks are one team that's continuing to look for other trades after the Kyrie Irving deal. They could be an interesting fit there. Poeltl's only making about $9 million right now, and he will be a free agent after the year. He will likely command a salary in the range of $20 million, according to media reports. But wherever he ends up going, it's going to be somewhere that needs defensive-minded help at the center position. And so, Boston seems like the team that would probably be the most logical fit, just because they would like to finish off their team and try to have the best roster going into the East playoffs and see if they can push their team all the way to the NBA Finals with a coach that's an interim coach right now. What a great season they've had, but Boston certainly could use some help at the 5 position. As you can see on here, they're talking a little bit about Lonzo Ball. Just mentioned to you guys about Lonzo Ball's availability. LeVar Ball, his father, was on a podcast recently and talked about the health of Lamar Ball, or excuse me, of Lonzo Ball, and he talked about how the original injury wasn't the worst part. He did have the surgery and all those kinds of things, and the recovery afterwards, what's been the most grueling for him. And he's still progressing quite well, and it seems like he's on track to return before the end of the season, which again is why they may make Alex Caruso available. Coby White at one point was listed as available as well, but if they do decide to trade here at the deadline, I think Caruso might command a significantly better package. And if they can extend Coby White on a team-friendly deal like they had Caruso on, maybe they could really have something going forward. A lot of injury notes, Devin Booker coming back, etc. The Utah Jazz, kind of your daily update on what they have to sell. The main pieces that they have to trade right now are Jared Vanderbilt, Malik Beasley, and Mike Conley. Not to mention Jordan Clarkson, Kelly Olynyk, Colin Sexton, among several other players. The only players they are not willing to move, of course, as I've mentioned before, Walker Kessler, the guy that they got in the trade with the Minnesota Timberwolves for Rudy Gobert, and Lauri Markkanen, the power forward / small forward that they got in the Donovan Mitchell deal. Outside of that, everybody else on the roster is available for trade. So if you're interested in, say, a wing, that's the one thing they don't really have, but they do have tons of guards and big men that could help you. So make sure you give them a call and see if they can get you what you need. But Mike Conley, I think, is very likely to be dealt. There's a lot of teams out there that need point guard help. For instance, we just talked about a few of them. The Suns tried to make the deal for Kyrie Irving. So did the Clippers. The Heat are looking for some guard help as well, and the LA Lakers. Conley's not going to come cheap, but he's not going to be overly expensive either. Maybe just one first-round pick and an expiring deal gets it done. Maybe just some young talent that's really promising that the Jazz like could get it done as well. As for Malik Beasley and Jared Vanderbilt, two very different cases there. Malik Beasley is probably going to be more your six-man type offensive spark plug off of the bench. Probably going to be worth 3 second-round picks, I believe, right now. I think he could command a first-round pick, depending on what your trade package is that you're offering Utah. If you're offering them literally a long-term contract like Davis Bertans, you're going to have to include a pick in that. As far as the Jared Vanderbilt sweepstakes go, the Portland Trailblazers, the Philadelphia 76ers are just two of the teams that are interested in him, but there's many more teams that have at least called and checked in on him. So his market is certainly white hot. He is expected to go for at least a first-round pick. So the Utah Jazz, who've done a great job building up some of that draft equity, still staying in contention in the Western Conference and being in that play-in picture right now, they are continuing to look to add assets. The Donovan Mitchell deal this offseason, Rudy Gobert, Royce O'Neal, Bojan Bogdanovic. There's a lot of moves that they've already made. They've acquired other veterans on this roster that are available to be flipped as well. So keep your eyes peeled for what the Utah Jazz are going to do up until the Thursday deadline. So thank you guys for joining us again. Keep your eyes peeled on Utah and the Toronto Raptors. We'll see if they decide to deal OG Anunoby. They will make their decision on deadline day, so don't expect anything big happening from Toronto until the deadline happens, because they want to decide whether they want to buy or sell on that day. They don't want to rush the decision. That's why the Brooklyn Nets, I thought it was interesting that they tried to hold up the Dallas deal until they were able to secure a deal for possibly a guy like Fred VanVleet or some other third team in this. But Toronto's holding things out until they get to deadline day. That's why I was kind of surprised to see Brooklyn risk the trade that they already had with the Dallas Mavericks to try to expand the deal. I get it. I understand Brooklyn wants to get what they can, have their cake and eat it too. But sometimes you just take the best deal that's on the table, which the Mavericks certainly had, and you move forward and see what else you can do from there. But they weren't. The Mavericks were not willing to wait, and so they said, "Hey, we want to get this deal done. We'll give you a couple hours after the physical, but after that, nope, we need Kyrie to be in practice on Tuesday, and then we need him in the game on Wednesday," and so that's why the deal was made official this afternoon. Little bit of news anyway as far as Utah and the Atlanta Hawks. Atlanta is certainly trying to unload the contract of John Collins. That's an absolute eyesore. If you want to check out his numbers this year, just to show you how bad he's been, and he's owed roughly $25 million plus for the next 3 years after this year. It's been atrocious. He's a decent starter, don't get me wrong, but he is nowhere near worth $25 million. I think if Atlanta's going to try to offload that deal, they're certainly going to have to attach some draft capital or some of their young players, possibly an A.J. Griffin. That might entice some of these other teams out there to take on that contract if you're willing to attach some pieces like that in a deal, because John Collins is just going to be a salary cap clog on your roster for the next 3 years after this season. John Collins once was a great player, and it could be a great next stop for him. I mean, his head is certainly not in the game of basketball right now. He said as much to media reports about a week or two ago, saying how he absolutely wants out of there, wants no part of this team, does not feel any connection with any of the players on that team anymore. There's even some rumors about Trae Young possibly being dealt. It's gotten bad in Atlanta, but John Collins has certainly not helped himself as far as on the court play, and so he's going to have to be attached with some other young assets, I believe. So keep your eyes peeled to see if the Utah Jazz try to step in here, take on that big bloated contract, and take on some other draft capital if they can, and see if they can rehabilitate John Collins' career, because he still has a lot of talent. It could be a lot of what's going on in Atlanta as to why his numbers are just so bad, how he's not meshing with the team, how he's not working well with Trae Young yet again. But let us know in the comment section what you guys think of where John Collins could go. We put out our fair share of John Collins media over the past 2 months. You guys can check out a number of videos on that. His asking price 2 or 3 years ago was 2 first-round picks, went down to 1 first-round pick. Then it was just a few second-round picks and a quality role player. Now it's just a quality role player, and even right now, I think that's even a steep ask, considering the $25+ million per year for the next 3 years after this current one. There's no way a team is willing to bite down on that unless they're getting something big back in return, in addition to John Collins as well. The Jazz were talking about the Mavericks' Dorian Finney-Smith at the time before the trade to Brooklyn for Kyrie Irving. Dorian Finney-Smith is widely regarded as one of the better defenders at the wing in the NBA, one of the better team-friendly contracts in the NBA as well. Certainly not an offensive weapon per se, but he's got a decent three-point shot. He's shot a little bit better in his career in other years, but he's developed himself into a nice 3-and-D type player. Whereas younger years, he was only shooting high 20s, low 30s from 3. Over the past few years, he's certainly gotten over 35, even 38% in some seasons. This year's a little bit more down than it has been recently, and that's, again, part of the reason why I think Dallas was more willing to trade him at this point, because they're starting to see, hey, this is all Dorian Finney-Smith really built him up to be, which is great. He's developed himself into a great player, but he's not a star, and he never will be a star, and they need help at the wing as far as an offensive punch there, and they still need that defensive help that Dorian Finney-Smith was giving them. Dorian Finney-Smith was great on one side of the floor and just had reached his ceiling anyway on the offensive side, and that's why I think Dallas was more willing to include him rather than a guy that still hasn't quite reached his ceiling and a guy like Josh Green or something like that. But we'll see what else the Dallas Mavericks decide to do here at the deadline. Another player here for the Jazz is not available as well, another young player. I will not try to pronounce the name. Hardy had a nice game against the Jazz tonight. He's going to probably see an expanded role in that offense now with some other offensive pieces going out the door for them. They have Dinwiddie off the roster now. They have Dorian Finney-Smith. Green is going to step into the majority of those minutes left by Finney-Smith anyway. But I imagine Jalen Hardy's going to see a nice uptick in his production as well. Let's be honest, Frank Ntilikina isn't exactly an offensive juggernaut. He's a good defensive specialist, if anything, at this point. Strikes no fear into the hearts of opponents anyway with his three-point shot. Hardy, on the other hand, kind of a spark plug offensively, can be kind of a six-man type for the Mavericks the rest of the way, depending on what they decide to do here at the deadline. But we'll see what kind of career Hardy and Green both have with Dallas with their expanded roles on that roster after the deal for Kyrie Irving. But thank you guys for joining us here tonight. It's been a late one for us, but we'll be with you guys again tomorrow, 9 o'clock. We'll make some videos here tonight for you guys to enjoy tomorrow. So make sure you hit that subscribe button. We'll see you guys tomorrow at 9 o'clock. And remember, the 9th will be live for you guys all day long, starting at 8 o'clock in the morning until probably about 5 o'clock in the afternoon after the deadline, breaking down every single deal, how it happened, who wins and loses the trades, trade grades. It's still going to be really early to do that kind of a thing, but we'll give you the initial brush of what the trade looks like. For instance, if one team gets, say, like a LeBron James level player for a second round pick, obviously the team getting LeBron James is the better winner of that trade. Hopefully we don't get that many or lopsided trades on trade deadline day, but we should have a lot of fun with it. A lot of names in the rumor mill right now, even more entering the rumor mill every single day. So make sure you join us on Thursday for that. We will also break down the future of what the teams, giving up the pieces could be. Are they going to be able to get the number one pick? What does their future look like from, salary caps perspective? And then the team that's acquiring the better player, does this make them a title contender? Does this get them out of the play-in? We'll break down all those kinds of things for you. And then, of course, what's the long-term future of those teams? So make sure you join us on Thursday, 8 a.m. We'll be live for you guys all day long. We do not just cover the NBA, though. We cover the MLB hot stove season. We did a lot of live baseball games last year. We'll get into some of that as we get into spring baseball as well. We cover the NFL. Super Bowl's here. We did some NFL content today about Brady, about Aaron Rodgers. We'll have some of that coming out over the next day or two. Keep your eyes peeled for that. Derek Carr sweepstakes are certainly heating up. You can check out that video I made for you guys today as well. And then in the NHL, the All-Star game we just had, the NHL is back underway. Just watched the Dallas Stars play against the Anaheim Ducks. John Klingberg returned to Dallas for the first time as a member of another team. And the Stars were able to pull out the victory, 3-2 in a shootout. So just a great performance by the Stars, getting back into the win column once again. They are the number one team in the Central right now, and should be a strong team to compete with in the postseason. Really strong goaltending. Their defense, I think, could use some more beef back there, but we'll see how things go. I think they could use some more punch in that lineup as well. A lot of options for the Stars to improve here at the deadline. We will be live for you guys in March at their deadline as well. But thank you guys for joining us here tonight. Remember to drop us a like on the video, hit that subscribe button. Join us here at the Upside here on YouTube. Follow us on Twitter at UpsideSN, Facebook, same name, Upside Sports Network, and on TikTok as well. Thank you guys, and we'll see you guys tomorrow night.